back to my channel, or if you happen to be new here, my name is Jess. Today is a very exciting day because I have finally picked out at least 6 of my favorite standalone books, and I did want to talk to you guys about them because I think they're very important. A lot of these are more moving mental health kind of books. A couple of them, I believe, yeah, one of them has representation in them. I just love these books so much, and if you're looking just for like a one-off book that you can kind of like read throughout the month and you don't need to worry about getting into a series, I did want to have a video like that on my channel. Now, I will say I am personally more of a series reader. I really like that because I think that it gives a lot of room for world and character development, but these books actually have a lot of that in just like one book, and that's why I wanted to showcase these. I do own a few other standalones, but these are the ones that I really enjoy that I think that you guys will also like. Most of these you may have read, but if you have not, I did want to kind of go over why they are my favorites and hopefully give you guys a little bit more information on why I think you should read them. Now, the first book I have here is actually a book that a lot of people either really like or really can't relate to, but it is a book that I thoroughly enjoyed, and that would be Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. They are making this into a movie, so if you're interested in reading this before the movie comes out, I would definitely recommend it. So this book actually follows our main character, Wade. He kind of lives in like a virtual reality world. Now, the world has kind of gone to shit outside of this thing that they call the Oasis, but people tend to use the Oasis to escape. People work inside of the Oasis. It's like a headset that you put on top of your head and then you're transported there. Now, your body doesn't move. Obviously, you just kind of sit in this console with your headset on, and that's kind of how it works. But I really like this story because of all the references. There's a lot of like 80s pop culture references in it. There's a lot of video game references in it, which obviously this is a book about video games. So if you're a fan of that, I think you'll really like this. If you happen to have like an affection for the 80s that goes beyond like a normal person's, I think you'll also really like this as well. I do not think that this is a book that you need to be either into video games or into the 80s to read, but I feel like if you do like that, I think you'll like this even more. This is like a classic struggle story about a good guy main character and then the bad guy who's trying to take over the Oasis. I think that it's really cool. I did also really love the ending. A lot of people kind of give the ending a little bit of grief, but I really enjoyed it. I love this from page to page. I do tend to really like Ernest Cline's writings, however, I also really loved Armada. But yeah, this is the one that I had to speak about because, like I said, it is becoming a movie, so if you're looking for something fun to read this month, I think that you should check this one out because I absolutely adored it. Now, the next book I have here is a standalone, but it's definitely not a light-hearted read by any means, but I think it is a book that is super important for anybody to read. I think that it is just one of those books that everyone needs to say that they have read, and that is The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas, or Thug. I loved this book so much, but it was so painful to read about. It follows our main character, Star. She's out with a friend one night, and then he is actually murdered by a cop, and yes, murdered by a cop. And that is what this book follows. So this book does follow, you know, her finding her voice and her family and her community and her relationship with her boyfriend, but also it is so much more than that. It is about the Black Lives Matter movement, and I think that is incredibly important. As somebody who does live in the United States, this book is far too real. Like, it is a fiction novel. It is something that Angie wrote just purely from fiction, but honestly, this is something that happens, and I think that it's very important that people read this because I think that it is so hard to read for a reason because things like this do happen, and I think that it is amazing that she wrote this because people cannot continue to turn a blind eye to the things that happen here. So if you have not read this book, read it. I'm not even giving you the option. You just need to read it, rent it from your library, whatever you need to do, but I adore this book and I can't wait for it to be a movie because apparently they're making it into a movie, and I think that is absolutely wonderful. Now, who would I be if I didn't include Stephen King? This is my most favorite Stephen King book outside of his short story compilations, and that would be Bag of Bones. I adore this book. This is about a writer whose wife dies and he kind of loses the inspiration to keep writing, so he does actually go to their cabin that they have, and things go a little crazy. He's out there by himself, you know, just trying to write this novel, and ghosts from the past start showing up. A lot of really creepy things happen. Obviously, it is a Stephen King book, but the reason why I love this book so much is because I like the writer aspect of it. I like that it is a writer out in the woods, like really trying to gain inspiration, and then all these things start happening. Also, the plot twist in this book is very cool. I think that it is a very great read if you're looking for something a little bit darker, but also I wouldn't say it's as dark as some of the other stuff that he's written, but I just absolutely love this, and if you haven't read it, you should read it. I think that you know, if you're an author, if you're like a writer, anything like that, I think that you'll greatly appreciate this. I feel like I need more people to be talking about Stephen King because, yes, I understand he's not an underrated author by any means, but I never hear anybody talking about him, and I'm such a huge fan. As you guys can tell, I have like every single book he's ever written. So this, though, is my absolute favorite, and if that doesn't say something, I don't know what will. You guys have to read this. I think that it is beautiful. Also, my copy is completely ruined because I've had this book for like 12 years. Now the next book I have here is actually a historical fiction that I really, really loved. It is Alice I Had Been by Melanie Benjamin. This follows our main character Alice and her family. She's just a normal girl living in this, you know, small town. They're a little bit more wealthy, but they have like a teacher that starts to come around and he starts gaining inspiration for Alice, like Alice in Wonderland. And it is sort of a retelling of how that story comes about. Now, a little bit of a trigger warning here. There is a little, like a hint of an inappropriate relationship between an older man and a younger child. You do definitely get that vibe in this book. So if you are sensitive to something like that, I don't think that you'll like this, but I really, really love this book. I think that it was so cool because the main character who's writing about Alice definitely kind of embodies Alice in Wonderland, but the man who's sort of writing about her, instead of being like the man who wrote Alice in Wonderland, I believe it's Lewis Carroll, I've never read it, but he's more of a Mad Hatter type character, and I think that's what's so cool about this. I loved the story. It was very hard to read at times, but I loved Alice as a character even though she is a younger child. She does obviously grow into a woman later, but I really liked this book. And if you're in historical fiction and you want something a little bit different, sort of like a retelling, I think you'll really enjoy this. Alright. I'm here. I had to mention it. We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. You guys know this is my top favorite book of 2017, so I probably didn't need to include it in this video, but I absolutely had to. There's a representation in this. The main character is gay. It also involves suicide. It involves abuse. It has drug use. I could not speak enough good things about this book. I loved this book so much. I think that it is such an important read. If you guys are not familiar, it is about a boy who is kidnapped by aliens, like abducted by aliens, and then give him a choice on whether or not to save humanity. All he has to do is press a button. But he lives such a hard life and has so many awful people in his life that he cannot decide if it is worth it. Now, the second half of this book is really, really where it gets good. Not saying the first half isn't. The first half has so much great character development. It has so much wonderfulness in it. I don't even know how to explain this book fully, but I love this book so much that I couldn't even do a review on it because I could not put into words how much I absolutely adored it. It is just something that I felt as I was reading it, and I think it's very important, and you guys need to read this. You really honestly do. So if you're looking for something a little bit darker, a little bit deeper with representation and obviously like, you know, heavier topics, I think that you'll really like this because while it is funny, it's also very, very heartbreaking. Now, the next book that I have here is also a mental health read that my friend sent me, and I absolutely love it. It is Eliza and Her Monsters. Now, there are parts of this book that actually really pissed me off, I'm not gonna lie, but for the most part, like 98% of this book, I absolutely adored it. If you guys are looking for a review, I believe I've done a review on my channel for this book. I loved this. This is what I wanted Fangirl to be. This is about a girl, her name is Eliza obviously, and she does a webcomic, and she is kind of like gaining popularity. Like her webcomic is very, very popular, and then a boy moves to her town and starts going to her school, and she finds out he's actually like a fanfic writer for the webcomic that she does, and she doesn't know whether or not to tell him who she is. And that's sort of what this story follows, but it's a little bit deeper than that because Eliza has severe anxiety, and Wallace also has a very dark past of his own. Trigger warning, there's a little bit of suicide in here, obvious anxiety. If you have anxiety and you have trouble reading about things like that, I don't know if you like this book either, but this book was beautiful, and I'm really kind of sad because I love this book obviously, but I've heard that Francesca also wrote a book called Made You Up, and it's not the best representation, and I don't know if I'm ever going to read that. I actually almost bought it, but I'm glad that I didn't. But when it comes to this book, I think she did a stunning job as somebody who obviously has severe anxiety. I thought this was an accurate representation, and I absolutely loved it. So if you're looking for a little bit more information, a little bit more resource on anxiety, if you're looking for something that is fun to read, but also kind of heavy at times, I think you'll really enjoy this. Alright, so I'm glad I narrowed it down to 6 books because I'm worried that this video might be very long. But that is it for today's video, you guys. I hope you enjoyed these recommendations. As I said, most of these have probably been read, but I wanted to pick out books that maybe were lesser known, but also a little bit more well-known that I think are worth your time if you've been like, oh, should I read that? Is that a great book as everyone says it is? So I'm hoping this video helps. But I hope you guys are having a good week, and I'll see you guys in my next video.